So let me hand out what's called the elimination diet. All right, so this is part of how I found that wheat was part of the problem, was by using a diet kind of like this. And I've just kind of developed it over time. Doing this a few times, and you only have to do it like maybe twice a year, I'd say, is about how often I do it. If I want to lose a size a year, this is how I do it. And so I've been able to lose weight and stay at a lower weight by doing this. Like I said, you'll see where you stick with it, but when you start the whole process, like I said, you only do that every once in a while. All right, so this is how it works. We start with phase 1. So phase 1 is where you're using these detox drinks. And so you could do both Royal Tea and like the lemonade drink, or just one or the other. But you also want to add to that lots of water. And so it says consume as much as possible. That's still probably only about 3 cups of the tea and maybe 3 glasses of the lemon juice. So if you start to experience the cramps and diarrhea, that's kind of where you may want to back off. Other people push through it, keep going, and they say that it just, they continue to cleanse with that until it's just done. So you can kind of decide what works for you. But during this, what you're trying to do is like a 24-hour fast with it and just cleanse that whole time. And then we go to the phase 2, and which is the vegetable fast. And so you want to do this if you can for a day or 2. You'll continue with lots of water. You're going to eat raw, cooked, and juiced vegetables, and mostly green, but a combination of colors. But you also want to avoid starchy, lighter colored vegetables. So no potatoes, no corn in this phase. So it's just the pretty, mostly green stuff. Squash is okay. That works on there. And like I said, raw is good, but cooked is fine. And juiced is good. And then in phase 3, you're going to add light proteins to that. So for example, soy is pretty light, and nuts. And then you can go up to eggs and fish. And that's as far as you want to go as far as the meat. You don't really want to do real meat, heavy meat with this phase, just light proteins. And because the heavy meats tend to really affect that digestive system for a lot of people. And so hold off on that. But check labels, because you can, and you want to avoid dairy still. But you can drink soy milk and do almond milk. And just look, though, because I kept thinking soy milk was this great idea, but then I kept having some of the same symptoms as I had with sugar, and I looked at it, and there's carrageenan in it, and I guess that's really not great for your digestive system. So look at your labels, make sure it's pretty natural stuff in there. And then we start to move to, then we get to introduce the carbohydrates or starches again. And that's done one at a time. Potatoes tend to be the lowest as far as causing problems for most people. And so you can add that one, but then you want to give yourself a day or 2 before you add the next one, which should probably be brown rice. You can try white rice here too. And then give yourself another day or 2 before you add corn, and another day or 2 before you try wheat. So this was kind of the longer part of it. The other phase is you're adding fruit. And so I kind of came up with, I realized, because I actually did this recently, and I was testing it out, and I was really looking at it as how realistic is this, and I really needed fruit sooner. So even though there's the sugar in the fruit, I still think that's a little healthier than a lot of the starches. So I came up with this alternative kind of way of doing it. So you can alternate the fruit and the carbs. So then you'd have maybe like some orchard fruits. So you can kind of separate your fruits a little. And so apples and pears maybe. And then, so maybe potatoes one day, then the apples and pears the next day. And that gives you 2 days with the potatoes. Okay. And then you'd add in your rice, and you could try berries. Okay. So then you've got a couple days of another fruit plus a grain. So anyway, so that's kind of how you could alternate it that way. And then you can start adding dairy and meat, because those tend to be the heavier proteins, and then you can kind of see how you respond to those separately as well. So it can take quite a while. I mean, it could be a full month anyway of this, or you could try to squeeze it into a couple of weeks where you're just kind of giving yourself time with each of these. But I did come up with some tricks with this. And so like I said, I actually did this recently. And so let me tell you my experience with it. All right. So first of all, I have a hard time fasting for 24 hours. That's really hard for me. Just a meal is, plenty. 12 hours is about right. But I tried this starting in the morning, and I had a really hard time not eating before bed. So that's where I would suggest starting it at 6 o'clock one night. So then your 24 hours is up at 6 o'clock the next night, and you can eat something before bed, because that's when you really want food, right, to sleep, because going to bed hungry is no fun. I would wait maybe till the next morning to try the tea, just so that you're not up in the middle of the night dealing with it. So maybe the next morning start the tea, and you could probably do a lemonade drink the night before. So drink the tea in the morning, continue water. If you're doing the lemonade drink, that's great. By about noon or 2, whatever, do another drink, a detox drink. And then another one possibly around 5 or 6 o'clock. And that's where if you drink like a juice. Now you want to use a juicer if you have one. Do you guys maybe have juicers? Because they're awesome. So that's what I did is towards the end of what I felt like I could tolerate, the first thing I ate was actually, I think it was a half a bag of carrots that I juiced with a lemon. So that was good. And then I thought I can do it for another hour or 2. So that's good stuff. But I'll tell you, even after 24 hours using the tea and just being without food, I was so excited for vegetables. If you have a hard time with vegetables, this is amazing, because you're going to want those vegetables by the time you can have them. So I had a bowl of steamed broccoli with coconut oil on it. And it was the best thing. I can still remember how that tasted. It was like so amazing. Better than any chocolate decadent dessert you could ever find. It was good. So it starts to change your taste buds, and you start to have this whole different response to food after you get everything out of your system. So I think part of it is while you're detoxing, you're getting all that out of your system, it changes that balance, that threshold, which is kind of an addictive threshold, to where you can even stop craving it, which is awesome. So now you don't even crave the sugar. You crave vegetables, which is so cool. So that was good. And then the other things I talked about when you're doing that first phase or 2, is you can still use nutritional support. So in the form of supplements, if they're really high quality supplements, those are good. So Standard Process is my favorite. You can use coconut oil and olive oil. So you can put those on things. So like I had a salad and I put olive oil and balsamic vinegar on it, and it was awesome. And then you can use unrefined salt. So unrefined salt is different than regular salt, but you can use that during that early phase. You can even use like herb tea and put coconut oil in it, and that gives you the sense of being full, because then it's like your body has that kind of that satiation from the oil. So that's one of my favorite tricks is don't sweeten or put anything else in the tea but coconut oil and about even a tablespoon. And you'll drink it and it's kind of the oil kind of sits at the top, but it's good. It's kind of like cream on top. I don't know. So it works. And that coconut oil is really good for you. And it will help with hunger a lot. So that's good in that early phase. And then I kind of know what, in this process I've already learned kind of what to avoid. And so I knew that I'm okay with fruit. And so I did do the fruit earlier. And then I knew I had to wait. I never went back to the grains, but I really waited as long as I could with the potatoes and the rice, because those are the 2 things that I still eat. So I kind of went right back to my maintenance phase, which for me, my maintenance phase is, and that's what you just kind of live with after you've done this, is I still don't eat refined flours or sugar. I don't eat wheat at all, and I do very little corn. And then I only have about 1 or 2 servings a day of a starch. So that's, for me, is rice or potatoes. And then I eat lots and lots of vegetables, both raw and cooked, and fresh fruit. I try not to eat very much of the heavier meats. So it's mostly nuts and soy and fish for me. And so that works. And that's a super healthy way for me. And everybody's going to be different. And that's why I think it's important to do this, because you hear these diets that come out, which is great, but they really aren't ever one size fits all, because everybody's got different things going on with their own body. And so when you do a diet like this, then you find for you that maybe corn is a real no-no, or maybe potatoes are, or maybe you really just got to be careful with meat. So you just never know until you kind of experiment with one thing at a time with this. And the other thing that I think is helpful, which is it gets away from that one-size-fits-all diet again, is the blood type diet. So what I learned about the blood type diets, and for me, I'm doing basically the blood type A in my maintenance plan, which is very little meat. The types of meat that I use are a blood type A. And then no dairy. I do yogurt, which is a blood type A thing. So that's really interesting. If you look at the blood type diets, sometimes that really gives you the clues on what you're going to handle. And that's by the D'Amos. They're doctors, a father-son, that have written quite a few books and done a lot of research on that. So that's helpful to know about. So now I'd like to share my green smoothie recipe from page 27 of my book. And it is good for both detoxification and diet. It fits with most diets, at least in most phases of the diets. However, there is fruit. And so if you're avoiding sugar or avoiding fruit, you'll need to use it in another phase of that. For example, the later phases of the elimination diet. And the recipe, I've come up with 3 tropical items. So one of them is the coconut milk, and it's a half a cup. I'm just going to guess that's about a half a cup. And then frozen pineapple is a key. So the problem with fresh pineapple is that the fibers are stringy and they don't all blend evenly. And so frozen resolves that, because if you think about freezing, it kind of breaks down the fibers. So it makes all the difference. Okay, so frozen pineapple, and it's about, a handful. That might have been a little too much. And then, so we'll just make a big batch. And then a full orange, and I just do, you have to peel them, of course, and then I just cut them in half. And then a banana the trick is to try to get them so that they've got the little brown spots on them, but not too ripe. So, but if it's not fully ripe, it doesn't work very well. So you want it quite ripe. And then a whole handful of spinach. And I actually put in there kale. And kale is actually a good idea, but it's not always, I didn't remember it, honestly. So if you don't have kale, that's okay. Just use extra spinach. And then I put some ice at the top. And then this would work by itself, just right here, but I have a secret ingredient. The secret ingredient, I think, makes all the difference, and I now crave them. It is lemon essential oil. And the lemon essential oil, actually, I think 5 drops in there, but I think I use 7. I love it. Okay, so lemon essential oil is an amazing detoxification oil. So it helps with, I actually have this in the detoxification section of the book. Okay, and then I'm going to blend it. It's very green. So how many of you are familiar with, do you use green smoothies very often? Any of you?
Not
Yes.
green, but
Not green, just smoothies? Anyway, okay. So definitely try it. Okay, good, thank you. So what I would suggest is in the next week, if you're up for it, try some of this, of what you learned today. And then that gives you, about a week to kind of test something out, and we'll create some accountability. How about that? Because we're going to ask you next time what you tried.